Live on video. Hello. Thank goodness Rose is here. It was looking to be a boys club tonight.
She just snuck in under the wire.
Yeah, she did. Well, we went on the air early, technically. I think a little bit.
We were.
Are we live on Alpha Geek Radio?
I think we are. Let me verify.
Verification. All right. So, like I said, it looked like it was going to be a boys club. We've got Brett and Kevin and Chris and Dan and Paul and Steve and Rose bringing in the ladies. I know Sandy's off on her trip, right? She left on that riverboat trip. I guess Steve is focusing on something else. He's not answering.
Well, Alpha Geek, I'm still checking. It takes about 30, 40 seconds, so it'll come up.
All right, I'll do a test recording to entertain myself in the meantime. Here we go. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast. .com. I messed up. All right. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast. Looks like you guys can hear that.
I can.
You can always hear it, right?
Not always.
Not always?
All okay, right. You are live on Alpha Geek.
Live on Alpha Geek Radio. Oh, I got a notification. Yes, we are live. Well, I'm glad to have you guys here. I'm just going to go ahead and kick into the show. We've got, actually, no, I don't think I can pull that off. All right, here we go. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Macintosh bias. Today is Sunday, July 17th, 2016, and this is show number 584. Well, there's no grandbaby yet, so I'm still here. I didn't get to go to Macstock, but as I got to say to Lindsay, I wanted to have my cake and eat it too, but I still get cake. We're on pins and needles around here, jumping up every time the phone rings, I got to tell you. I'll try to stay focused on the show, but no promises. Today I sent a tweet. Somebody asked for a link to something, and I included a link, but it was a link to our betting pool for when we think the baby's going to be born. So yeah, that wasn't the link they were looking for, but it was still pretty funny. All right, I did get to do my presentation at Macstock though through Skype. I did a talk on Apple Photos and how it's much more capable than you might think. I've given this talk before at a local user group, and it takes about 15 minutes to go through it right. But at Macstock, you only get 20 minutes to talk. In just 20 minutes, I showed how to turn on the sidebar, the difference between photos and all photos, how to make albums and smart albums, how to use the tools that show by default, how to reveal more tools, how to use those tools, how to set the tool selections as default, how to install and enable extensions, how to use Affinity Photo and painting and haze removal, how to use Pixelmator extensions, how to use the external editors extension. And people said that's about what it sounded like. About halfway through, I got a note from Steve saying that they'd contacted him and we were having some Skype breakup, which was really unfortunate. But at the speed I was speaking, they were missing an awful lot. So that was kind of disappointing, but I heard that it kind of healed itself, and I guess it worked out in the end. Anyway, it was suggested I went a little bit fast, but I got the whole thing done. My main hope, though, was that people's eyes would be opened up on what's in there and to encourage them to poke around, not necessarily to have them remember, every single bit of it. In any case, it was fun to at least be a little part of Macstock, even if we didn't get to see Don McAllister do karaoke at the Midwest Mac Barbecue. Skype audio was only so good. How bad was it, Chris? People said it was tolerable, but then, I don't know, that's hard to believe. Once it goes bad, it seems to be very, very bad. Too bad? How do you know? Oh, too bad is an unfortunate, I think is what he meant.
Yeah, no, it was me, yeah.
Okay. Just checking the intro here. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the... Okay. A little late. A little later than I like. Come on. Come on. Just a little bit over there. There it goes. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan. A little early. Got to get that first set point right, or it's unfortunate later. All right.
Chris said he could hear about half of the talk.
Oh, no. Like the front half or the back half or every other word? That's terrible. Oh, well. You know, when we checked the audio, it was not in that room. So probably should have checked that. He said he was having some problems with Wi-Fi. So that's probably what it was. Every other word. Oh, man. So everybody was just being nice when they told me it was a good talk. Oh, well. Here we go. And what are you going to do? We did the best we could.
Your test went pretty smoothly, I thought.
Yeah, but we weren't in the same room.
Oh.
He was someplace else. He was testing the camera and understanding where he would need to point the camera and what we would do with screen sharing.
Eris and Mark joined us.
Who?
Eris and Mark.
Nuris, you haven't been here in ages. Nice to see you again. And Mark, always a pleasure.
Mark who?
Absolutely. You know, it's funny. I told Dorothy in a text message. I turned to Steve the other night and I said, I don't even remember what Dorothy looks like anymore. And he said, Dorothy who? So she's been off on her boat for so long, we've forgotten what she looks like. So let's see. What every other word I plenty from the. I think that your typing got a little screwed up there, Chris.
Or a cat attacked his keyboard.
Yeah, that's always possible.
It happens here.
All right. Just a chat app while grill burgers. Oh, ooh, now I want a burger. Hey, Steve, don't forget to make the mushrooms tonight.
Mushrooms, you got it.
All right.
Baby Bell.
Plenty. Okay. All right, here we go. You might have noticed that I write a lot. I write blog posts all week long, in theory publishing them during the week, but they kind of tend to pile up towards the end of the week. I also write a monthly column in Don McAllister's Screencast Online magazine. Today, I write all of my articles using either my MacBook Pro at my desk with the Apple Bluetooth keyboard that I love, or my MacBook when I'm on the go with the less wonderful but still adequate keyboard. For the blog, I use an app called Mars Edit from red-sweater.com, which has long been a favorite amongst bloggers. I write in HTML in Mars Edit, and when I'm done, I can whoosh the post up to my blog and publish from there. One advantage of that workflow is that I can partially write a blog post on one of my Macs, whoosh it up as a draft, and then refresh on Mars Edit on the other Mac and keep writing. Now, I do have to remember to refresh each time to make sure I'm working on the same version, but about 90% of the time that works perfectly well. Now, that's a lot of preamble with no problem to be solved yet, isn't it? I think the problem I'm trying to solve is fear of missing out. All of the cool kids now are using Markdown instead of HTML to write, mostly because it's much more human readable, so easier to edit, and they're doing their blogging on the go using an iPad. Don likes the SCO articles to come in Markdown, so I've been forced to use it. I use Byword from bywordapp.com, and while it's fine, I don't love it. Might not even be Byword's fault. It might be that Markdown isn't just natural for me yet. Well, last week I heard Jason Snell of Six Colors say that he uses an app called OneWriter from that's hard to say, OneWriterApp.com for the iPad and iPhone to do his blogging. And that's where the FOMO comes in, gets basically kicked into high gear. Well, the cool kids are doing it. I want to do it too. Well, OneWriter is $4.99 US, so that seemed a small price to pay to find out if I could get on this Markdown iPad blogging craze. This very article was written on my 12.9-inch iPad Pro using OneWriter. I'd like to jump right into the middle of what I like about OneWriter. First of all, there's a row of extra keys that show above the on-screen keyboard or show on-screen when you're using the type cover. This extra row of keys is called the extended keyboard, and it can be disabled in settings if you don't need it. I like it because it gives me instant access to create headings, create bulleted lists, links, and embed images. It takes away one of my biggest problems with Markdown, and that's that I can't seem to remember the syntax. I know these things aren't hard in Markdown, but I can't remember whether it's one asterisk at the beginning to make something italics, or does one asterisk make it a bullet. I can't remember if it's hash marks to do headings or is it asterisk. With OneWriter, I have a button that says B for bold, which, by the way, is 2 asterisks on either side of the word. And I've also got a bullet button that starts a bulleted list, and if you hit it again, it changes to a numbered list. Again, adding that little dash and a space to make a bulleted list is not that hard, but I can't ever remember which character does it. Let's say I want to copy a link from a website and format it properly in Markdown. In OneWriter, if I've copied the URL, all I have to do is tap the link button in that extra row, and I get a choice of entering a new link or plopping in the one from the keyboard. If I choose to plop it automatically, it highlights the text area for me to type in what I want people to see to represent that link. Super easy. I love that. You can even enter in links just as their text. So if you type http://podfeed.com in OneWriter, it'll actually change it to HTML when you export it as HTML or formatted text, and it will respect it as a real link. Pretty cool. You can also use real HTML if you want in OneWriter, which is huge for me. For example, I like to put smaller images to one side or the other in my posts and have the text wrap sweetly around them. Often I need to resize the images to make them fit nicely. Bizarrely, neither of these things are possible in Markdown links. So if I want my post to look nice, I have to use HTML. OneWriter letting me use Markdown for simple stuff and HTML for the trickier bits is the best of both worlds. Now, I find OneWriter a bit clumsy when selecting text, which you have to do often when you're editing. It's almost impossible to select a horizontal line of text by holding down and then dragging with your finger because the document instantly begins to scroll down, selecting multiple paragraphs. I mean, you were just going like a 16th of an inch, and all of a sudden it's like, it goes flying by. Drives me nuts. It might be something I can get used to over time, but it really doesn't work well. Now, I think this app is made to write code as well because the extended keyboard includes a pair of parentheses, square brackets, squiggly brackets, and doubling single quote pairs. We're using all of those in learning JavaScript and programming by stealth, so this might come in handy for that too. I mentioned the extra row of keys. Well, there's also an extra row of keys below that, which oddly contains many of the same keys, like heading, bold, italics, bullets, checkboxes, links, and images. I'm not really sure why there are two rows of keys. I did notice that if I use slide over to bring up another app like Telegram on the right-hand side, the original set of extra keys that I talked about disappears and only the second set of extra keys is there. Now, they're not exactly identically formatted, but so this, let's see, how do I describe it? The lower set of extra keys in between those extra keys is where you can see your autocorrect options. So that's actually maybe a little bit more useful, but the upper set has a few extra things like I talked about, the squiggly brackets and such. So they're slightly different, but it's kind of weird that they have both. I would have put one or the other. Let's see. One of my favorite things about OneWriter is the ability to preview my work. You get access to the preview in a pretty unintuitive way. To the right of that second extra row of keys is a downward-facing chevron. If you tap on that key at the top right, there will be revealed then and only then a preview button. Tap that and you can see your links and images in line with your text. Works really well, but I would forget how I found it and then I couldn't remember where it ran off to. So again, chevron key on the right-hand side brings your keyboard down and then it shows up. So if I don't use OneWriter for a little while, I'm afraid it's going to take me a while to remember where that's hidden. So good thing I wrote up a blog post about this I can go back and refer to. Well, there's one tool I just can't live without when writing, and that's Text Expander. It's the third app I install on a new Mac after 1Password and Dropbox. Years ago, I tried using it on iOS, but so few apps supported it, I gave up. Well, those times have changed. There are now 75 apps for iOS that support Text Expander. And lucky for me, OneWriter is one of them. By the way, I don't mean OneWriter supports Text Expander with the third-party keyboards, but I mean native within the app, so you can just type away on any keyboard and get access to your snippets. You can find in settings in OneWriter, settings are revealed when you tap that downward chevron that hides the second row of keys too. You simply flip a switch to turn on Text Expander and then give it permission to sync your snippets. Text Expander integration on OneWriter is good, but not perfect. I noticed that with many of my snippets, I have to repeat the keystrokes. I think it may be Text Expander and iOS's built-in autocorrect conflicting with each other. For example, my snippet to type the word markdown is MD followed by a semicolon. As soon as I type that, it changes to ME instead of MD. If I back up and type it again, then autocorrect allows me to use the expansion. I got to figure out a way around that. Maybe I got to create an iOS snippet that says MD means MD. I'm not sure how to fix that. And syncing of snippets doesn't appear to be automatic. I had to open settings after I found it again and go into Text Expander settings and tell it to sync manually to pick up a new snippet I'd created the day before. I tested creating a new snippet in the iOS version of Text Expander, and that seemed to work immediately. But then later, that one stopped working. I went into settings, told OneWriter to update the snippets, and then it worked again. Not quite sure what's going on there. It's probably a limitation in the way Apple lets Text Expander talk to other apps through its API. When in doubt, blame Apple for a restricted API. OneWriter has a built-in web browser which you can enable in settings. You get to the web browser by swiping from the right side of the screen. That happens to be the exact same gesture that you use to do slide over to have two apps open at once. I had a little bit of trouble finding the sweet spot where I could get the web browser to come over and not engage slide over. But once I found it, muscle memory made it easy to use both interchangeably. You can turn off the built-in web browser, but I'm not sure you'd want to do that because it's the tool OneWriter uses to produce your previews. It's also kind of handy to have a web browser right there to go look things up. Speaking of slide over, OneWriter works well with two apps open side by side where they're actually both permanently there, not just the slide over and slide back version. With the iPad Pro 12.9 at least, there was plenty of real estate for me to have Telegram open in the column on the right and my full text width still showing on the bigger panel. Of course, having a great text editor on iOS is only useful if you can get your files in and out, right? While writing in OneWriter, you have an action sheet icon in the extra row of keys, which allows you to copy what you've written, email it out, print it, or open it in another application. If you choose Open In, you can select either as a real text document or as a PDF. Nice flexibility there. In settings, you can enable saving in Dropbox, Evernote, Cloud App, and Droppler. I enabled Dropbox, and then using the file structure revealed by tapping the hamburger icon in the upper left, I was able to save my documents right into Dropbox. Kind of weird that they don't do those the same. So some of the stuff is enabled differently. It was a little odd. Let me stop, make sure that's recording, and that what I just said wasn't true. What have I missed?
Well, one thing you missed is we have someone new in the chat room, John H.
Oh, John H.
And he wasn't here by accident.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
People do stumble in from time to time, and then we send them on their merry way.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Very exciting. Nice to meet you, John. He's not getting to see a very good show, though. I haven't screwed up much yet.
Well, it's early.
All right, where was I? I started to say it was done wrong, but it wasn't. In settings, you can enable saving in Dropbox, Evernote, Cloud App, and Droppler. Cut you off.
So Dan's asking how the app works with VoiceOver. Have you tried it out?
No, but remind me at the end of the show and we'll do that. I don't think I did. I've been pretty good lately about remembering to do that. What was the last app I did? I was really excited that it occurred to me to check it out. The show isn't over yet. Thanks for the confidence, Brett. Jeez. Flexibility there. In settings, you can enable saving in Dropbox, Evernote, Cloud App, and Droppler. Oops. You know, Rose is one of these wonderful people with a tough exterior, and she's all marshmallow inside. She sends pictures from time to time of her little nephew that would just melt your little heart. All right. Here we go. Let's see. Droppler was the last thing I said. Where's Droppler? Where is it? There it is. I enabled Dropbox, and then using the file structure revealed by tapping the hamburger icon in the upper left, I was able to save my documents right into Dropbox. Try it again. Let's do that one more time. I enabled Dropbox, and then using the file structure revealed by tapping on the hamburger icon in the upper left, I was able to save my documents right to Dropbox. I went to my Mac, and sure enough, this review that I was writing was available to me. I opened it and marked down on my Mac, and after saving, I reopened in OneWriter on the iPad, and all of my changes were there. Just because I'm a giver, I also tested changing the file on my Mac while it was open on the iPad, and I successfully borked things up. I think OneWriter handled it gracefully. I ended up with two versions, one listed as a conflicted copy. I deleted one and everything got happy again. Another way to work on documents is to use the plus button that sometimes shows up on screen on the bottom right of a document you're working on. I say sometimes because the only way I can get it to show up is to pretend I want to go into the file menu from the hamburger and then go back to editing, and that's when it shows up. Kind of a strange way to do it. As soon as I start to type, that little plus disappears. Anyway, if you succeed on getting that plus button to show up, you can open documents directly from iCloud, Google Drive, and more. I added the Together app, which was pretty cool. I could see saving documents in and out of Together as part of my workflow. I've mentioned a few settings, but OneWriter has tons more. You can change the fonts for both editing and previews, change the default folder where your documents are kept, toggle word count and markdowns, inline preview, and more. Remember the action sheets I mentioned that you can get to from the keyboard? Well, sometimes you get 3 dots on the left bottom side of the screen, which also opens the action sheets. Again, I trigger that by pretending I want to go into the file browser and then coming back out to editing to get those 3 dots to show up. One thing I was going to mention is that there's no find function in OneWriter. That seemed like a big miss to me. But then I went poking around in the action sheet menu and found a button that said Add Actions. These actions could be URL actions, JavaScript actions, or you can install from the OneWriter directory. I wasn't bold enough to try the first 2, but I chose to look at the directory instead. I was directed to the OneWriter website where I could see lists of functions I could add, one of which was find. When selected, it shows you the JavaScript that performs the find function. That was cool because I kind of understood it because of programming by stealth. I installed it, and now the share button shows me the find function, and it works. Not nearly as using Command F, but pretty darn cool that you can add functionality to OneWriter with actions. The bottom line is I really like OneWriter because it allows me distraction-free writing. I worked on that article way past my bedtime since even the clock doesn't show while you're writing. And as long as you don't move over Telegram and talk to Stephen Getz, you can get everything done and keep working in a distraction-free environment. Believe it or not, there's more I could tell you about. Did you know it supports Today widgets? And we haven't even talked about tags yet. But the word count is telling me I had been approaching 2,500 words about a text editor. I may not use OneWriter often for blogging because it's so much easier to put in images using my Mac, but perhaps I'll finally buy the Transmit FTP client and make even that easier on the iPad. OneWriter is definitely worth a grand total of $4.99 US to me, and I hope to find more excuses to use it. Check it out at onewriterapp.com, and that's the number 1, writerapp.com. Okay. Let's see. Steve has something for me. Bob is just listening, not in the chat room. Dan wants to know if OneWriter is iPad only. No, I think I said at the beginning, let me see. Where is it? I think it is for both. iPad and iPhone. Yeah.
Big shout out to Honda Bob.
Honda Bob's here. Woo!
Not in the chat room, but listening.
That's good. That is wonderful. This is the wrong iPad. Do I have OneWriter on this one? I think I do. OneWriter. No. Oh, I was having some trouble with it. Let me go get it. Let's go find out. One moment, please.
Pretend you're listening to Muzak at this point. Girl from Ipanema. Oh, and by the way, Bob, since you're listening, you're getting a big shout out. No, I'm not going to sing, Kevin. You're getting a shout out from Kevin. Howdy, actually, Bob.
If Howdy Bob is on the app.
I'm not sure he's on the app. He said listening.
Okay. I'm not sure he can hear you.
Everyone can hear. Let me turn myself up.
No. That's not the problem. It's not that you're not loud enough. It's that I don't. Do I have you enabled?
All right. Testing. Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
All right. Well, while I play with.
Yeah. I'm on the app.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whoops. 1, 2, 3. Come on.
No. Now Kevin wants to sing.
Kevin wants to sing?
Well, when you went away with silence, I said, pretend it's Muzak. Say girl from Ipanema.
Great. Now, why isn't voiceover coming on? Why is voiceover off? Where is it? Double tap timeout. I don't want it on.
Voiceover.
Can I whistle an elevator tune?
Cancel. Voiceover off.
Okay, I don't want it on. I want. Steve, John H. is never going to come back. I told you the show was going too well, and he was going to need to. Where did they hide? They moved Triple Tap home. Where is it? I can't find it, Dan. It looks like I haven't turned it on this iPad, but I don't remember where it is. Stop it, Steve. Triple. Nope. I remember they renamed it. Accessibility settings. Okay, I'm looking. I got voiceover. I can turn it on entirely. I got the speaking rate, speak hints, use pitch change, sound effects, speech, braille, rotor, typing style, phonetic feedback, typing, modifier keys. Always speak notifications, navigating with loud cursors and double tap timeout. It's not there. Well, yeah, unless there's an Amadeus Pro failure. All right, I'll just turn it on.
Voiceover on. Quick nav off. Landscape. Alert. Important. Important.
Okay.
Okay. Button. Okay. Settings. Home.
It's going to take
Messages.
a second.
One writer.
You guys hear that?
One writer. Testing 1, 2, 3. The Facebook notification. Facebook.
Stop reading my Facebook notification. Stop
Kim
it.
Fandel and Kenny Lee shared your video. Notification.
Okay.
One writer. File browser.
Okay,
Button.
that worked.
Settings. Button. New line. Shares document or open. New line. New document.
No lie?
Preview. Button. Word count. 20 words.
Yeah, it looks like it's working.
2016. Zeros. Test. File browser. Testing 1, 2. Markdown. File browser. Button. File
Yeah, so far so good.
NC_2000.
This is on the iPad, Al?
Yes.
Untap edit. Button. Closes menu.
Yeah,
And did you confirm it works on the iPhone,
Switcher.
I did.
Public. Facebook.
including voiceover?
Settings. Settings. Search for quick net insertion point at end. Voiceover off.
There you go. No, I didn't do it on the iPhone. Do I need to test it again?
No, I think
that's probably good.
Yeah, I think it is.
Sounds like Allison Hartley's thing. Oh, cool. But I need somebody to find that triple click home thing for me, because that's going to bug me that I can't turn that on. 2 great talks. Oh, so it was Allison Hartley and Dr. Robert Carter, right? Robert Carter is one of my favorite people. He's awesome sauce. It was super cool. Very good. I'll give them feedback that you guys liked it. Let me check and make sure I did this interaction correctly. Evernote, Cloud App, and Droppler. I enabled Dropbox and then used a little bit of a funny gap, but I think I can't. Where did that go? Yeah, too late. Started too close together. That's all right. It's fine. All right. Uh-oh, Cal Mickey's in twice. He must really love the show. Okay, what's next? Next, we want view. This is exciting. This is actually really cool. I mean, everything I write about is cool, but, sometimes cooler than others. All right, here we go. Yeah, it's usually with less whistling, though, John. The way the show's being made. Oh, Allison Hartley was really good on the karaoke. God, I can't wait to see all the videos.
I heard Don did some pretty good back in the USSR on karaoke.
Hilarious.
I would have loved to have seen that.
Me and Barbara were in a band together many years ago.
Musicians and singers, pretty talented.
It's a Wally recording, Steve, so I'm betting there's going to be some good
I
stuff.
bet there is.
All right, here we go. While I was working on my review about one writer, I noticed something very odd happening. Every time I tried to write the word the, starting with leading caps, it would change instantly to all lowercase. That meant I couldn't start sentences with the or there. I just enabled text expander, so I thought maybe it was something in my snippets, but I couldn't find anything like that. Plus, this was only happening on my iPad Pro and not on my Mac, where the snippets are the same. I contacted Smile, one of the greatest developers of all time and makers of Text Expander. Within an hour or so, Jeff from Smile got back to me. He and I went back and forth a half a dozen times trying to diagnose the problem. I made him a video using ScreenFlow with my iPad connected to my Mac. I sent him some screenshots. He sent me deinstall, reinstall, restart instructions, and we flipped every switch we could find, but the problem persisted. He then asked whether I would consider installing a diagnostic tool on my Mac that would let him look at the system logs for the iPad. Would I? You betcha. That sounds fun. The Mac app is called iOS Console from lemonjar.com. I downloaded and installed iOS console on my Mac and was happy to see that it was from a signed developer. I figured I could trust my new little friend Jeff to steer me the right way, but you can't be too careful with this stuff, right? Anyway, I plugged my iPad into my Mac, launched iOS console, and instantly the app was flooded with diagnostic information. If you haven't ever looked at the Mac console app, which is in application/utilities, you really should open it up and take a look. If you're like me, little of it will make sense, but it's fascinating. If you've run the Mac console before, iOS console will look very familiar to you, I should say. In the main body, you can see the day and timestamp followed by the process name and ID, and then an explanation of what it was able to find. The essential step in diagnosing a problem is to have a clean slate. Execute the steps that cause the problem and capture the diagnostics. iOS console, like the Mac console, has a clear display button just for that purpose. Another way to keep track of where you started a new task without clearing the data is to use the insert marker tool. Makes it real handy to block it off and say, okay, now is when I did the thing that I'm trying to read the diagnostics for. From the toolbar of iOS console, there are buttons to launch the terminal. And if you modify the toolbar, Activity Monitor can be installed as well, or viewable, I should say. However, I'm not sure what value those things have because neither of them have access to the iOS device. The last button is to see the crash logs. I had no idea that crash logs are stored on my Mac for all of my iOS devices. They're buried in user/library/log/crash reporter/mobile devices. Very useful to know that they're there, and even better that with the iOS console, I don't have to remember where they are because pushing that button will reveal them to me. Of course, iOS console includes a search string function, so you can search for the name of the app or process that's giving your device fits. The only problem with apps like iOS console and the Mac console is that you find yourself looking at these terrifying errors and you start to think catastrophic things are happening all the time. For example, I got one that said, failed for URL, cydia:/package/com.yahoo.package error. This app is not allowed to query for schema Cydia. Well, it turns out something was cranky in the Flickr app, but it was no big deal. You can make yourself crazy if you look at everything. It's like being a hypochondriac and reading about diseases. You're pretty sure you've got them all. I was able to grab the logs and send them to Jeff at Smile for him to diagnose my problem, but it turns out they didn't give me any good info. The good news is that he and I kept working on this until we discovered that one little snippet from the Tidbits autocorrect library that's supposed to change capital T, capital H, lowercase e, into capital T, lowercase he, was causing the error on my iPad to change just a leading cap into no caps at all. I don't know why it was doing that. We don't know why it didn't break on the Mac either and why it did the wrong correction on the iPad, but at least it's fixed from my end because I just deleted it. It'll probably keep Jeff up at night wondering, though, why it did that. The point of the story, though, is that iOS console is a terrific tool to run diagnostics on your iOS devices. It's free to download and run, but $14 to purchase. It's the old school shareware model. Remember that? If you use it, buy it. Go check it out at lemonjar.com. Bye, Mark. It was awesome chatting with you. Sometimes give me shudders. Oh, thinking about work? Jino Cho, you forgot to log out after the last time you were here, and you've been showing up in the chat room ever since. I keep thinking you're there, and then you're not. But this time you really are. Jin O Choi, sorry. I will do better next time. All right. Should probably save. Kevin's been saying save. Do you have an Apple script or something, or what do you have that tells you to do that?
Well, are you serious?
What?
What are you talking about?
Kevin
save
says save twice.
Well, it's probably...
It is built into the app, but I don't think that's what he's doing. I think he's doing it manually because he only writes it right when I stop. I've noticed that it's not coming out periodically.
Right. He probably does have a snippet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Text.
I listen, then Text Expander.
Text Expander, yeah.
That's awesome. Does anybody in the chat room not use Text Expander?
I don't.
Can you believe this, guys? Seriously, Steve does not use Text Expander. What's wrong with him? Oh, Chris, the app just crashed. Don't worry. Donald Bird's going to get it updated for iOS 7 pretty soon.
Wait, aren't we coming up on 10?
Yeah. Actually, he might have done 7. But he didn't do 8 or 9 yet. I'm aware of my responsibilities to the show.
And he takes them seriously.
Absolutely. All right, here we go. I was chatting with my daughter Lindsay the other night about a photo she took using Snapchat. She said she took the photo with Snapchat because it has a built-in low light mode that works much better than the built-in camera on the iPhone. You know, I enjoy photography as a hobby with my mirrorless camera, and I like to use the more advanced features, so I thought it was time we took a look at one of the third-party camera apps that brings advanced features to your iOS device. The app I'd like to tell you about is called ProShot from riseupgames.com. It's free with in-app purchase. The in-app purchase is really cool, but I'm going to save it till the end. I should mention that ProShot is available for Android and Windows Phone as well as iOS. ProShot gives you nearly the complete control you'd expect on a fancy pants real camera. When you first open ProShot, you'll see controls around the edges of the screen. In the upper right, it will say Auto. If you tap on that, it brings up a little wheel where you can change it from auto to program mode, full manual, and 2 custom options. Simply tap the shutter button on the far right to take a photo, or use the red button above it to take a video. If you leave ProShot in automatic mode, you still have a little dial at the bottom of the screen for exposure compensation. You can increase or decrease the light by up to 3 stops in a very intuitive interface. When the camera first comes up, it's in continuous autofocus mode, and you know that because the shutter button says C-AF. You'll see a little circle in the middle of the screen just begging to be moved around. Drag it around to change the focus and exposure to whatever you've pointed at with your finger. When you do this, you'll notice that the shutter button has changed from C-AF to say PF. Not exactly sure what PF stands for, but if you want to get back to continuous autofocus, just tap the circle again and it will revert back. You can also lock the exposure by tapping on the AE lock. And that's at the top of the screen. And once you tap on it, it'll jump down from the top of the screen into the middle of the photo, and then you can drag it around and leave it someplace. This is really nice if you want to set exposure on one point, but then reframe the photo. You can tap it again to turn off the AE lock. The iPhone camera app does all of this too, but it doesn't invite you the way ProShot does, so it's easy to forget that it's there or not even realize that it's there. I think a lot of people don't know that if you press and hold on the screen, you can change the exposure and you can move it around and have it change the exposure and autofocus to different areas of the screen. Across the top of ProShot, you can select 3 aspect ratios for your image. You can choose from 16:9, the default of 4:3, and square at 1:1. Right below the aspect ratios, you can see the f-stop and shutter speed that has been selected since we're in auto mode. By the way, after you take your photos, and you go back and look at the photos you've taken, you can find out the information, the EXIF information about the photos. Well, let's jump out of auto mode now and have some fun. I mentioned you can change to program or manual mode, and you'll notice on the iPhone that aperture priority and shutter priority are missing from that list. That's because iPhones have fixed aperture lenses, so no application can truly change the aperture. With program mode selected, we get new options on the right side of the screen next to the shutter button. In automatic, we could only choose to turn the flash on or off or auto, but now we have control of the ISO from 50 to 1600, which allows you to change how much light is absorbed by the sensor. With high ISO settings, you get more light, but you can introduce noise into your images, so use this feature with caution. We can also set the white balance in program mode. We can choose candlelight, fluorescent, flash, or overcast, but we can also choose to set the color temperature manually. Setting the color cast was very easy and intuitive to me. With full manual mode, in addition to ISO and white balance, we can now control the shutter speed from 1/2 second to 1/8,000th of a second. I read the FAQs on the Rise Up Games website, and they explain that the options you see here do depend on your hardware. So if you're on Android, you might see different options than iOS, and the type of Android phone you have can affect it as well. I should mention this also works on Windows Phone. But wait, there's more. In the bottom right is a button that would have been a mystery to me if I hadn't watched the excellent video on the Rise Up Games website. This button gives you extra cool functionality. First of all, you can do bracketed photos. This is super useful for making high dynamic range or HDR photos. With HDR, you take photos of multiple settings and then blend them together, I should say with multiple settings, and then blend them together to take one well-exposed image. You can take HDR to an extreme and make artsy-fartsy photos, but it's also quite useful when you have, say, like a really bright sky and shadows from something in the foreground. You can blend them together to get one really good photo. The bracketing option on ProShot lets you choose 2 or 3 shots and change whether it's the shutter, ISO, or exposure that's changing, and move a slider up to plus or minus 3. I tried using ProShot with the exposure setting to bracket photos, and I couldn't get it to work using exposure. I suspect this is operator trouble, but I fiddled with it quite a bit. I changed it to ISO for bracketing, and I got both an over and under exposed picture and a well exposed version, exactly as you would expect. Light painting is a fun photography technique where you take long exposure images of cars going by at night, or you have someone dance around with a flashlight and get interesting images. Within the light painting section on ProShot, you choose how long it will expose from 0.5 seconds to infinity. I think infinity means until you tell it to stop. You can choose to use light trails mode, which works without you needing to know very much, or you can use light add mode, which acts more like bulb mode on a traditional camera. The best part of the light painting mode in ProShot is that it has an info button that takes you to their webpage explaining how to use it. I played with it a bit during the day with a lamp, but that's just not the same. Can't wait to play with it at night. In the dial on the bottom right, it also lets you to choose to do time-lapse photography, where you set the interval and a duration. You can even choose it to save just images, all of the images, so you can process with another tool, or you can save it as a movie file with control over the frames per second. And finally, you can change your video settings from 720p, 1080p to 4K if your camera supports it, and the frames per second, you can change them from 24 to 240 frames per second. Now, Steve is a big fan of the time-lapse photography technique. In fact, our neighbors just had a giant crane deliver a lap pool into the backyard, and he made a time-lapse photography video using his GoPro. But with this, he could do it on his iPhone. Well, that's a lot of options. Just a few more, I promise. Over by the shutter button, there's a little gear where you can turn on a thirds grid. You can show whether your camera is level as well. I also like that you can change the color of the interface. At first, it was a pale teal green on the menus with white letters, and I found it a little bit hard to read. So I changed it to dark blue so the white letters were more legible to me. To view your photos, you swipe from left to right on the screen, or you tap the little images icon in the upper left. That images button is important to keep an eye on because if it's pulsing, you aren't going to be able to get to the photos because it means it's still processing the images. That can take a little bit of time if you took a lot of shots. After viewing the photos, you can swipe back to get into the camera mode again. These photos, if you allow access, will be stored in your camera roll. I found that on occasion, if I bounced out to photos on the iPhone to delete my test messages and came back to ProShot, all of the controls were gone from the camera. I couldn't even take a photo. A quick quit of the app and relaunch brought it back, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Actually, I said that was on the iPhone. That happened on the iPad, so I'm not sure it would happen on the iPhone as well. I also did have a few screen problems when using it on the iPhone. It sort of jammed up the menus into a pile and made them unreadable. Again, a quick quit of the app and a relaunch, and it came back to normal. I didn't do enough testing to find out if it was related to changing from landscape to portrait, but it only happened a couple of times. Okay, I told you this had in-app purchases at the beginning, right? So what else could ProShot have that you would need? Well, it's not all about you this time. The in-app purchases are donation amounts. So basically, this developer has cracked the code on how to make his app shareware from the iOS App Store. It's hard to find, so I want to tell you where it is. If you tap on the gear on the right that lets you change the color scheme and turn on the grid, right next to that, there's a button that says Help Make ProShot Better. If you tap that, you'll get an option to donate anywhere from $1 to $10, whatever you think it's worth. And about the app, the dev, Eddie Cazelli, actually thanks his mom, dad, grandma, and grandpa. How can you not donate to this guy for such a cool app and honoring those who raised him? Check it out over at riseupgames.com. Sorry, I got a little distracted there because I realized something. That's what was wrong. Send that to the blog. There was an error that I fixed, and I fixed it wrong. Don't forget to cross your eyes. What are you guys talking about?
We got onto a little young Frankenstein tear here.
Oh no, don't get Steve started.
They already have.
Steve manages
Actually,
to talk
they're
about
doing
young
pretty-
Frankenstein like 3 days a week.
They're doing pretty good themselves.
Oh, I'm so
I
glad.
might just let them run with it.
Oh, good. Grandpa, how can you not donate to this guy for such a cool app and honoring those who raised him? Check it out. Oops. Oh, come on. Why do you do that? And honoring app and stuttered a little bit. Let's try that. Donate to this guy for such a cool app and honoring those who raised him. Check it out over at. Why did I forget that? Not ProShot. Check it out over at riseupgames.com. Abby wasn't one of them.
Oh, it wasn't?
No.
Agnes?
It was Agnes, Aggie, Agnut, Agnutty, Angus.
Angut.
Angut. Yeah. I'm not quite sure why. If you go to about on podfeed.com, you will actually be able to read all of the things he used to call me, because the website or the show is dedicated to him and my friend Eric. All right. 29 minutes. That's pretty good. Okay, here we go. Abby Normal. Oh, good Lord. You really have gotten them started, Steve. Who started it, actually?
I think Kevin.
What a shock. All right. Here we go. Oh, never mind. All right. Here we go.
Well, it might have been me. I think Kevin and I conspired.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe in some combination.
Okay. That's awesome. All right. Well, that's going to wind us up for this week. And no promises on the show for next week. I'll be working away, and I've been doing my JavaScript homework, so we'll probably have a chit chat in there somewhere. Bart says he can be flexible with baby time, but I don't know what's going to happen with the live show. We're not really sure. We're going to just play it by ear. So keep an eye on Twitter, on Facebook, our Facebook group, and our Google Plus group. And anyway, don't forget to send in your dumb questions, comments, and suggestions by emailing me at allison@podfeet.com. Follow me on Twitter @podfeet. That Google Plus community I just mentioned is at podfeet.com/Google Plus. And the Facebook group, which is also equally on fire, is over at podfeet.com/Facebook. Having a lot of fun in there. Everybody who joins there is having a good time. So come on in and contribute and ask questions. People helping each other. We're listening to Haley rant about her terrible experiences trying to buy Apple Care Plus. I mean, it's crazy in there. Anyway, if you want to join in the fun of the live show, which may or may not be at 5 p.m. on next Sunday night, but is normally on 5 p.m. on Sunday nights at podfeet.com/live, you can join the friendly and enthusiastic NosillaCastaways like John H. did this week. Thanks for listening, and stay subscribed. A lot of ad-lib in there, huh?
Dangerous.
I know.
Living on the edge there, Podfeet.
The Secret Service. All right. So how come nothing went wrong? It's a little strange.
Probably nothing got recorded.
31. No, I can see it recorded.
Have you saved?
I have quite a few times. Track, shift check, 29 minutes. That's pretty good for when I did by myself. All by myself without any Bart to help me. I had like 10 different things I tried to do this week, and all of them, like, either they were too hard, so it was going to be, I needed to really spend a lot of time researching. Something just kept going wrong. This last article I wrote like 3 o'clock. So, all right, here we go. It's about her terrible experiences trying to buy Apple Care Plus. Thanks for listening, and stay subscribed. There we go. Actually, what's Kevin still doing here? Kevin, you're late to go set up for your podcast there, right? geekiest show ever. How come you never pimp that here? You really should. Uh-oh, time to stand up.
Well, you can pimp it right now.
Everybody should go subscribe to geekiest show ever. I mean, why not? It's got Kevin on it. It's got Mike McPeak. It's got a lot of goodness. And they met in the chat room, by the way, because you never know what's going to happen in here.
This chat room.
Right. Did I not say that?
Well, you said the chat room. Like, I guess it's presumed this is the only one.
Only one worth being in. All right. AIFF, save. All right. I think we're going to let the audience go early. They've been very well behaved.
Yes, they have.
Probably because that troublemaker Sybil wasn't here. What?
So you're just teaching people that if they don't show, you will talk about them behind their back. So that's encouragement for them to come.
Well, they should, right?
Yes.
Oh, let's see. Dan, is Dan still here? No, it looks like he left. Was he excited about the accessibility on the app? I don't remember him saying.
I didn't see excitement coming from him.
Burger time. All right. Well, John H., what do you think? You think he'll come back? Was this fun? Were you guys nice to him? You got to watch out for Kevin.
He didn't engage too much. He may have walked away from his screen. Not clear. That happens.
This is a pretty small crowd, but relatively enthusiastic. That's interesting that hardly any women are here. We got Rose, though, which is always good. All right, guys. I think I'm going to call it. Okay? Thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. We'll see if there's a show next week. I don't know. We'll find out. We don't know. Bye. Say goodbye, Steve.
Bye, Gracie.